welcome back to the show. Today we have two guests, the creative team behind Space Case, the graphic novel. It's Stuart Gibbs and Ward Jenkins. So let me bring them in. I believe this is the first time that they've had a face-to-face meeting. I don't know. They can explain it better than I can. So
yeah,
there they are.
Hey. All right.
Yeah. This is the first time. This is the first time I've actually even seen what Ward looks like. This is.
Oh, good. I've seen you, but this is the first time, definitely, like, verbal and visual. It's like it's occasionally through emails, but also through group emails. So that's kind of basically what publishing is all about, right?
Well, we'll get to that in a bit, but first off, before we start talking about the book, I'd like to know a little bit about yourselves, your history as readers of comic books, cartoons, and as creators.
Oh man, Ward, you want to go first with this one?
No.
Okay.
You're fine.
Yeah. I've been a voracious reader my whole life. I honestly tried to get published in first grade for the first time. It was the first time I submitted my first book for publication, so I got my first rejection in second grade. It took a while to get going there, but
you got to start the rejections sooner.
Yeah.
Well, you showed them with New York Times best-selling author.
It took a while. Right, yeah. I should have sent that to the guy who rejected me. But also I was been a big fan of space travel as well. Another rejection I got was when I was like 13. I wrote to NASA and I volunteered to be the first kid to go into space, and they also sent me a rejection letter. But they rejected every person. I mean, nobody's ever gone to space. Right? We never sent a kid into space. So any of the millions of children who volunteered have all been rejected. So I'm in good company now.
And what about as a reader? Did you read comics or cartoons growing up?
I read. I will admit that I loved comics growing up, and my parents, who were wonderful parents, this was like the one thing that my father felt like was like too childish, and he did not really like me reading comics or Mad Magazine. So I was that was like what I was. That was my rebellion, was to like do that on the sly, take my money and go buy comic books. And so I still have like the first Batman comic I bought when I was like probably around first or second grade. It was $1. It's this huge, wonderful, like special edition comic they did. And so I was a big fan of that. And then in terms of space and sci-fi, I mean, one of the most seminal books for me was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I think is not.
Don't tell that to my wife.
Oh, no.
She tried reading it and she was like, the only thing I found funny was the fact that his house was going to be destroyed for a highway in the north. He found out that Earth was being destroyed for.
Really, Mike? I'm not alone in this, believing it's one of the funniest books ever written. But also,
I remember reading that myself, and I thought, wow, this must be the humor is so different. I was like, it must be the British thing, So, but
that's why I tried to tell her.
Yeah.
But I think also how its view of the universe and the world and kind of mocking how how we're just kind of all little pawns in this giant thing. It was this kind of fascinating worldview that like when I was pretty young when I read it, and was just really kind of shook me, but in a good way, I think. And I feel like there's parts of that I try to emulate the humor, but also sort of like that world building in my books.
Okay.
I definitely feel that you did that. We can talk about that, about the book later. But no, that was actually one of the fascinating things that I think we connected, was this having. I think we're about the same age, so the NASA and space. I longed to be an astronaut myself when I was really young, because I can't remember being still alive when they were still. I mean, I was very young, but I could remember them talking about the moon landings and that sort of thing. So, but was there any more that you?
Do you remember maybe your reading comic books, cartoons? What kind of jogged your interest in it so much that you wanted to make a career out of it?
Is that for me or is it?
Yeah, for you, Ward. What one's jogging your interest?
Oh gosh, I definitely had a wild ride when it came to like comics and of course with space and sci-fi and all that. I was definitely one of those kids that I drew all the time, and I loved Peanuts, Charles Schultz. That was kind of like my lifeblood. It felt like, and I loved Garfield as well. And so I went from that to like I was the kid that I never really bought comics. I was the kid that would go to my friend's house and read, and they would have like all the comics on the bed, and we'd just be like, "Oh, let's see what else you got." And so I was always going to my friend Spencer and Marcus, and those guys that we used to just talk about. Spencer was the guy that had all the Marvel books about all the characters, and we would just read through that. He was almost like our connection. And so it was through that where I started learning about the type of art that I really liked when it came to comics. Like that was when I first read or learned about like the different styles, like Kirby, like in his style. So I definitely growing up in the 70s reading a lot of those comics. But again, it was through like somebody else's. These are somebody else's comics. But I do remember loving Ghost Rider for some reason because I just loved the fact that he was on the chopper and he had a skull, and I loved like horror and like old classic Universal monsters. So I always was getting into like eerie and creepy magazine and Mag magazine as well. So I just love all those artists who did these really. Jack Davis was a big fan. I was a big fan of his work, and so I just kind of going from that, and then also just being a big major fan of cartoons, and I eventually down the road got into animation. That will end up being my lifeblood. I just so having those connections with comics going into animation, that was kind of like I think later on it was when I started getting into more graphic novels, like and again it was like I was reading somebody else's copies, like Cerebus. I think it was in college, and then I read Mouse, Art Spiegelman, and that to me was like a big defining moment for me, realizing that comics could be so much more than just like a fun entertainment, but it's more like it can be really a defining moment and be a more of a personal thing. And then later on, I was in my first year working as an animator, and I was I'm sorry, I'm kind of talking a lot here, but I just thought it was funny. I was sitting there talking with my director, who was a big time comics guy. He was a big time like Fantastic Four, John Buscema, Kirby. He was talking with one of our producers who's also into comics. And they mentioned something about Watchmen, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I heard about that. I never read it." And the producer was like, "Hold on a second, you have never read Watchmen? I can't even talk to you right now." And I was like, "What?" And meanwhile, my director's like, "Lord, why?" But he came back the next day, and I got to read Watchmen, and I realized, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're talking about, and then read Dark Knight Returns and stuff like that. So that's kind of mostly now. I'm not really kind of a comics collector, but I do occasionally read through like the mostly independent or indie graphic novels and that sort of thing. So and mostly animation as well. So again, it's like a weird I got a whole bunch of stuff going on here, but somehow I make it work.
Well, I find it interesting. Well, it makes sense now that Peanuts was a big influence, and I'm sure it was a fun to work on the Stoopy in space.
Oh my gosh, yes, that was actually fascinating because we're talking that. Talking about a defining moment was being able to work on Snoopy in space because you're dealing with space, and it's actually had a direct connection with NASA for that show. and then I also got to work on Camp Snoopy. So I've been on a show where when I was doing storyboards, that I literally did not even need to do any research. I had it all in me. My comic DNA was already there for drawing those poses and characters. I loved it. It was fantastic.
Did you get one of the NASA Snoopies? Do you know about the little NASA Snoopies that they do?
No, I didn't. I wish, and now I need to have one.
Yeah, I know you gotta, yeah. I don't know, but NASA is this long-running connection with Charles Schultz, and they take little Snoopy, little statue. I mean, they're this big or whatever, but they take them to space and give so you can get like a little Snoopy that's been to space. And
that's so great. I'm gonna have to look that up. That's great. No, I should have known that. I mean, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun to basically draw Snoopy in the spacesuit with the big, huge, the thing had to be so big.
Helmet.
Helmet. Yeah, it's not so huge. So whatever that thing is,
Okay, so let's jump into the book. Space Case, not Space Camp, as the bear I miss. That's why I turned it off, because it was wrong, and I apologize, and I didn't want to make you guys start over. Space Case, but so it's sounds Stuart. It sounds like it's your what you think might have been like if NASA had accepted your request to be a kid with a little bit of murder.
I didn't get to become an astronaut, but I got the second best thing, which was that one of my closest friends became an astronaut.
No.
Oh, wow.
His name's Garrett Reisman. Garrett is a friend of mine from college, and if your friend becomes an astronaut, you get to sort of get to be like astronaut by proxy, right? So I would go to the Space Center, and I would. I got to do some of the, little bit of astronaut training. I have used the space toilet simulator. So
no,
you get this, among other things like, you get to do this stuff, and so I got to say I got to get inside the space shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
At one point, when it was one of the ones was being refurbished, and one of the things that hit me immediately was it was so much smaller than I thought. I know how big the space shuttle is, but the actual amount of room the astronauts got was quite small, and you'd be sharing with it, and it'd be zero gravity, and so people would be moving around. It's not like you're just all sitting there on the floor wedged in together, but still,
yeah,
I was really shocked by that, and then I was able to get in a mirror capsule. And that was like the most claustrophobic. I made it like 30 seconds, and suddenly I was like, wow, I would not have made it.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And so even though I loved NASA and had been interested in going, and I'd seen all the IMAX movies about going to space, which are documentaries and are truthful, but they leave out bits like how those. The space shuttle looks enormous on an IMAX screen, right? Because the screen is 6 stories tall, but in real life when you're there. And so, as I went through this, I was starting to recognize that, we know that our glorious visions of space travel in Star Trek and Star Wars are really kind of like super futuristic pipe dreams, but even like what I think is presented to the public about what space travel is like is not, is sort of the glossy exterior of it. And so I was like, man, if you were really up there, it would just, it wouldn't really be as amazing as you think.
It would suck.
Some of it would be, but being weightless is amazing from what I hear. But so it started to go down that road of like, how could I do a story set in space that was like if I thought it would be difficult as an adult, like what would it be like as a kid? And it seemed like as a kid it would just be miserable, and I didn't want to do a whole story about how miserable it was, so I thought I didn't really intend for it to be a mystery when I started, but that is kind of like a good framework for the mystery, the set of mystery, like the classic locked room mysteries or whatever. Is, you know, somebody's trapped and there's murder, and then, you know, you can't go anywhere. You're stuck there. It seemed the moon base was a great place for that.
Yeah, that was perfect. I think, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The idea that's what really kind of appealed to me when I first was handed this project, was the fact that, you know, a kid, like, he basically dispels everything within the first 4 pages, you know, which I love that. Like, you know, we start off with this, what our usual fantasies about space travel and sci-fi worlds that is what we hope and wish it would be. Star Trek, I think, is a lot of that, because that seems almost more attainable, say, like, than maybe Star Wars, you know. But that was actually a lot of fun to kind of come up with this crazy, fantastical world that we've always, you know, terraforming, you know, and transporting and all that, but also is like washed away immediately with the boring reality of, like, well, they have to build these things so they, you know, have to accommodate, and they can't be too large, they have to be kind of smaller. So I thought that was kind of like, everything was kind of simplified, you know, and not crazy sci-fi. You know?
I mean, I should talk about, like, first of all, like, I mean, I gotta fell over how amazing Ward's art is in this, but it's so fun to see, like, you're right that you know, like, because you got to you did such great stuff of, like, the super futuristic dream, like, pie in the sky spacecraft and everything, and then it kind of comes back down to, like, what the space is actually like.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You do have a couple of elements in the book where you have the big mechanical arm, which I love. So I was like, I'm going to use that, like, as, like, really nice, like, great visuals. And so you could probably tell, like, I'll do a little different, like, angles, but that was great action pieces. And I thought, you know, even though we talk about how, you know, there you go. I thought it was interesting. You know, since you're here, the 6 fingers. I thought, what you had, it was like 4, and then it was like 2 thumbs. And was there a reason why you felt like that was designed that way?
You know what's so funny? Like, is I did it so long ago that when I actually saw your drawing with the 6 fingers, I was like, "Hey, he put 6 fingers in there."
It's a great. Honestly, I felt like, I kind of, now I think about it, probably because it was basically used for, like, you know, picking up, you know, for cargo and that sort of thing, which makes sense. But it did come up with a really nice, like, visual, I think.
Yeah. I'm sure I had some really well thought out reason for it, like, back in the.
And now you can't get away with it. Now you have to talk about it. No.
I mean, like, a lot of it. It was because, you know, the novel version, I probably was the longest first draft of something I ever wrote, because I beat my stories out, but then every time I got to something, you know, it was happening a little bit in the future, and it was happening on the moon, and so I'd write, like, oh, they run across the moon base, and I think, oh no, they don't run across the moon base. I don't even know how you move on the moon. Then I'd have to basically reach out to Garrett and be like, how do you move? Like, move? I would, you know, or okay, I'm describing the airlock, and, you know, I mean, I like, he must have been so frustrated with me, because I was constantly reaching out saying, like, do I have this right? Is this, you know? So yeah, I'm sure that that robot arm. I mean, there were some kind of variations of that. There's the Canadians built a robot arm that's just called, like, Canadarm, like, for the International Space Station, and so I would look at a lot of this stuff. Yeah, the first thing I before I even started writing the book, one of the first things I had to do was figure out, like, what the moon base looked like and how it was laid out. And so I just started drawing like blueprints of a moon base to see how this story would work and how everybody get around. Yeah, exactly. So
I just want to say, I just want to say, you had me hooked here when you have a map at the beginning of the book. That's all you need to hook me.
Lord of the Rings, you know. Lord of the Rings.
Yes,
I loved it too, and honestly, it was funny because I would reference that immensely and make sure that I'm really big about details, and I'm one of those nerdy kids who would read and go, "It doesn't look right," and that way, if he's going to be turning right, and I mean, I really was literally trying to do the same thing when it came to when I tell a story to make sure that okay, it makes sense because Dash is going to be walking down this hallway, not that hallway, and I really was like, okay, if he's going to the what was it the gym.
Yeah.
He was going to go on this right side and maybe go upstairs. You know, so I had literally like 3-dimensional, like, so for, I posted this on my Instagram and I have it with me. I actually made a mini model so I could actually visualize. This is, again, I'm like, I probably went too far, but
no, I could not appreciate it more because when I'm looking through, like when I was looking at it, I was always like, oh yeah, they're always going the right way. Look at that.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Light, that's a sunlight, you know. Oh, not sunlight, but yeah, actually it was. But no, yeah, I thought you would appreciate it. Really, it was mostly about, you know. So this was being my first graphic novel. I wanted to make sure it was going to be done right. There were a lot of, I mean, we won't get into it, but there was a lot of delays, mainly because just things happening. And then at one point, the unfortunate thing is my dad had passed away, and so I had to there was a delay there. So, but in the course of all that, just trying to make sure that we were maintaining the deadlines. But I just couldn't allow just like, oh, any random background, you know, like, oh, just a window, you know, because there's no windows. Oh, there's a doorway, you know, like, so I had to make sure that I was doing this correctly. And then, so when I built this, it was mostly as a response to like corridors and people turning. And I was like, the way it was designed based off the map you had, that these corridors had these, you know, certain, you know, corners. And so that's what I was like, I was trying to figure out, like, what's happening here, you know. And so I would get my camera in there and I'd take shots. And
I love so much.
There you go.
Because I mean, look, one of the things about, you know, one of the concerns I have was that, you know, it's in a tight space, and you write a book in a tight space is one thing, but you've got to, you know, draw it and keep it visually interesting while and even like the color palette sort of shifts it, you know, between like the you know, there's some stuff on holodecks and it becomes much brighter, and so there's like this fear of like, okay, is it going to lose some dynamism in you know, when it's just in the base? And I think it's amazing how you sort of kept that going, and like I'm a big map person. This is not the first book I've done. The very first book I did, I will go back to that Lord of the Rings map, right? And all the the house, the Winnie the Pooh books had maps in it, right? And I'm like, I love these maps. And I had written Belly Up, which takes place at this fictional theme park zoo, and it was very close to production, and I was away for like Christmas, New Year's, and I suddenly I'm like, oh my god, I want a map. I want a map in the end papers. And I come back from the meeting, like ready to reach out to my editor, and I have an email saying, I think this book needs a map. And I was like, oh my god, you know, and I had drawn a map like on the back of a menu or something, and I was like,
oh, funny.
So I've gone through this, but often I will draw up my map, and then whoever the artist will move things around on the map, like for probably artistic reasons, but I'll be like, that's not where the thing is, right?
No, right. No, I'm one of those like purists. I will make sure that this is done correctly. And I think it was a couple of times I'd say, I'm not sure if this if this is correct. I think there's a couple of logic things I just wanted to make sure, but it was always through like editor, you know, and art director. Here's another one I made. This is for the second one, but this is the commander's, you know, quarters, because her quarters was very different shaped, and so when you walk into the front door, you're getting there's like the only window that one of the quarters has, and so I had to figure out like make sure that was done correctly, and so I even made like a table for it, you know, checking the desk.
That is so cool.
Right? And my wife would be saying, "Are you sure this is important for the like is this the right time you need to be working on this?" And I'm like, yes, it'll help me in the long run.
Because I don't know if you like when you guys were kids, right? And you're reading a book with a map, and then because you'd flip back to the map, right? And you're like, oh, they're going here, like And
Exactly.
so if the map is wrong, some kid's they're just gonna be like, wait a minute, I don't understand how this.
Trust me, when I was listening to the audiobook of the Silmarillion, I had to find a map of and try to.
I don't know. Is there a map for that? Because I'm like, I don't know what's going on in that book. I had to actually write down all the gods and angel or whatever I couldn't figure out all the elves. I was like, I needed a flow chart, So
yeah, well, that's why I did the audiobook, because I tried reading it and my mind just went. Well, not only did I enjoy the map, but I also, and let's talk about the characters now, but I also liked how you introduced the characters. There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry. I found that a nice way to kind of introduce the character without a lot of, needed exposition or.
No, that was Stuart's idea, and I love that. I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, that was just that because the book has, in a novel, you can do all these various ways of exposition, but I thought like the first thing I sort of introduced was the space toilet. It sounds like I'm obsessed with space toilets, but I'm only going to say that yes, that the one of the things you learn by knowing an astronaut is that the first question every person has for an astronaut is, how do we go to the bathroom in space? And so I thought, okay, I gotta first scene has got to take place in the bathroom in space, so we can, so I could deal with that in the book. But if I got to describe this, it just seemed kind of fun to say like, okay, here it is, and we'll have a diagram, and then once I did that, I was like, oh, but wait, what if I did that with a character? And then there was also a diagram to sort of introduce each character.
So do the actual space toilets have a list of instructions on it too, or is that just?
I'm sorry. I'll have to say this because I did extensive research on finding out exactly what space toilets look like, and there are a couple. And you probably noticed, Stuart, there were a certain it does not look very comfortable. People, they don't understand ergonomics, I guess, when it comes to the human body. When you have to go to the bathroom and sit down, for some reason there were like these weird little lids that go up over and stuff. So you're going to be sitting on, but there's one that I saw that looked like it had a lid, and I was like, you know what? I could do the joke where it's a 2001 reference. In 2001 Space Odyssey, there is a scene where the main guy at the very beginning has to use the bathroom, and there's like a huge long list that it was actually a funny joke that the directors Kubrick had put in. It's very extensive details of how to use it, and it's like a really funny thing. For us, it's usually just like a flush or whatever. So I was like, there'll be a nice little nod, and and there are really funny little things that we try to put in the book. So, but that was a little thing I had to like add.
I think it's great. Yeah, in real life, like the astronaut. I mean, I'm not kidding. There's a space toilet simulator. They they have to train. They really have to train to use the toilet. And so I feel like they probably, they've put in their hours and they know how to use. But if you've got a moon base full of kids, yeah, it totally makes sense that there would be. You go on Earth and there's like things saying like don't put stuff in here, right? So
I mean, it's like the last thing you want is like anything floating around you.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
Well, I did also notice in the thing about the toilet, it said that in Star Wars and Star Trek, they never talk about going to the bathroom, which being a Star Wars geek, I'm sorry. There's a couple of times when they mentioned the refresher, so.
Oh.
Does it ever come up in movies though, or is it you have to go?
I don't think it's comes. Not in movies, but it's come up in like the animated cartoon shows and.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So, refresher.
That
We'll
totally took me out of the book.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. When I wrote it, I was talking about like all the movies and yeah, but they yeah. There's so much. There's like at this point, you're right. You could make a whole career out of trying to watch every version of Star Trek. And stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They never talk about it, but they don't talk about it a whole lot.
So tell me a little bit about the main characters of the book and how they find themselves on the station.
Well, so the idea is that that this has been a big deal that we're going to actually colonize the moon, and that people are signing up for 3 to 5 year stints, and to get the people they really need. Those people don't necessarily want to leave their kids behind. So there's been a lot of fanfare and everything, and training, and telling everybody how great it's going to be that they're going to go up there, and so they're officially known as lunar nuts, but everybody on Earth calls them Moonies, and everybody knows who all these people are, and so they've all been sent up here, sort of thinking like, hey, this is going to be like Star Trek or something like that, and the kids have arrived and been like, wow, this is just not good. Yeah. There's a bit of
I love that.
Sold a bill of goods.
Yeah. Yeah, I love. I think that's actually one of the things that definitely appealed to me was that besides the it's just the reality of it. I think that's one thing that we were trying to do, and I guess that from when reading. I actually read your book before I read the script, just so I could get a little bit of background, because you definitely have to edit yourself. I noticed, like you had to take out a lot of details because it's written like a script, and I think that, in fact, I have it right here. I actually print it up, and I actually draw on it, and so I have like all these. That's actually the first version.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I first get it's when I'm reading it. I think it's where I have my first initial visions of like how I think it might work. And then I'll do it digitally. Sometimes I'll scan these. And I think later on I had to just print out this basic,
Yeah.
But I might share some of these because I think it'll be kind of neat. I think for some people see. But the idea was for me. I'm sorry. It was great for me to kind of see that it's still grounded in reality. There's a little bit, of course, some sci-fi-ness to it, but also I think another thing I wanted to tell you, Stuart, that I really loved is how diverse the all members on the base are, and I think that was kind of a really neat. It gave me a lot of really good feels. Just kind of being able to work on all these different types of characters, and I do have to say that I think I had misread about how many Lunarnauts are there, and unfortunately I had to go back. We had to do like all that editing and cut back. I had drawn almost like 50, 60 people there, and I was like, Stuart's like, no, there's only about like not even 30, and I was like, what? Oh no. But
I know. I felt bad about that one. I felt bad. Yeah.
No. It was like it made me realize like, oh, I need to pay attention to like what the actual list. And so the second book, which I just finished the inking on it, I definitely adhere to more, because then you start seeing these other characters come into play, and I'm more aware of like who's in the background, and it's not like it's going to be a lot less populated than the way I initially drawn, but and I think that actually adds to the realism, I think.
Yeah.
So was there a particular character that each of you maybe latched onto or wanted to, became a personal favorite? I mean, the Roddy the gamer reminds me a lot. Reminds me a lot of my son.
Well, I don't know how much Ward even knows. I had based the characters of Dashiell and Violet on my own children.
I think I read that was the names, and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I didn't even know that until after I'd already started. So,
and Kira is based on my niece. Now, the characters in the book are more multi-ethnic than my kids are, but you know, I have this personal connection to those characters in the sense that it's really the only time I've ever written like somebody I know into a book in a sense. And Dashiell's lead is not exactly, he was older than my son. When I wrote it, the character was older than my son was at the time. And I kind of, you know, thought, well, what is my son going to be like? The character Violet was my daughter. I just channeled her. And so when I first got the copy of Space Case, I was able to go to them and say, like, hey, do you guys want to see what you look like? And I didn't want to tell you that because I didn't want you to even think that like you had to draw my character. And they don't. I mean, they don't necessarily look like my kids, which is right. They're not supposed to look like my kids. But my kids were so tickled to basically see like this version of them. And Violet in particular just loves like the version of Violet. Like I think even in Violet's own mind, like that's what she would look like.
She was a lot of fun to draw, you know, and Dash was a lot of fun to draw. I think his hair was always kind of an issue I had to draw, you know, but because I had a certain way of actually doing each of the locks, you know, and but you know that I think that's actually a sign of a good, well written, well designed character was that I didn't mind drawing him all the time because I'm basically drawing almost on every single page, you know. But I really did. Who else? Kira was a lot of fun. She has a bit of a kind of a more direct. Let's just get to it, and kind of like and knows stuff. She's pretty smart too, and I think that her and Dash make a good combo.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So like with all, you know, that's kind of an unusual place for me to come in and be like, you know, that these characters are so like kind of ingrained in me or whatever. And then I saw and I was like, yes, that's I just love it. But then I to the kids and say like, what do you think of this? And they were like, yeah, great, okay. So
good.
Kira,
so. Yeah, I was gonna say also about Roddy. The interesting thing about Roddy was that my son, he's a gamer, and so I actually wrote down some certain things that as asides that he would say, and because it wasn't like actually in the script, it didn't show up in the final, but it was like these funny little sayings that he'd say that I would hear my son say. And then I'd say, hey, is this correct? Like, he goes, no, you gotta, this is what this means, you know. And talking about like, you know, KD, you know, and KD ratio and all that other stuff, you know. And so, but it's what was funny is that Roddy has this different side of him as a gamer, and I just love that he's like this total huge, you know, superhero type guy who's super built, and in reality he's not. He's almost the exact opposite, I guess, you know. But I love that it shows like this idea that, you know, we have these personas, you know, especially in the gaming world, you know. But he's a funny character too.
So, Ward, let's still talk a little bit about your process for drawing. And did I hear you correctly that you said this was your first graphic novel?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was.
So that being the case, how did your work in animation? I mean, like we mentioned, you worked with the Peanuts, and you also did My Little Pony. How did your work did your work as an animation person come into, and what's your process?
It's been very interesting because starting out with like loving animation, I was an animator, and then I became like, and then at one point I was a director, and I directed commercials, animated commercials, and that sort of thing. And then at one point, the studios I was at, they let me go. It was right around 2008. The big recession was happening, and so I had to pivot. And thankfully, I had a art director from Simon & Schuster, Lucy Cummings, who said, "Hey, I like your style. I have this picture book for you idea, and let me see what you can do. And so I ended up doing picture books from then on. It was like around 2009. And so so going from, and that actually was a really nice progression, going from animation to I love character design, that sort of thing, and it actually helped me kind of learn how about storytelling. You know, how to, when you turn the page in picture books, it's a really big. It's almost like editing. It's like an edit cut, you know. And so going from that to I would say it was around 2015. I got another. Some of these jobs that come to me are like, this literally feels like they literally fall to my lap. I got a call from this person who said, "Hey, they're looking for storyboard artists for My Little Pony. You ever heard of it?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, I have." You know, and so I couldn't believe that I was actually going to be doing, you know, that sort of thing. And so going from books, animation to books to storyboards, and now graphic novels, it does seem like a natural progression. I did have to say that one of the biggest challenges for me was cutting back. As you notice, the book is kind of pretty thick. It's like, you know, 360, which I'm sure, like, Stuart, you know, like your other book, graphic novels are like a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I there's a lot of dialogue, but at the same time, there's a lot of action. But to me, I was like also coming from this storyboard mindset where I'm doing a lot of moment to moment panels, and I had to learn. In fact, Lucy was telling me, it's like, look, we're going to have to see all these pages we have here, these 10 spreads. We need to convert it down to 5. And I was like, what? I got to cut it down. I was like, I can't do that, but. It was actually a great learning process for me. It's the kill your darlings mentality. It's like, okay, this can't. I have to allow the reader to understand. Oh yeah, okay, yes. I don't need to show them going around the corner. I can just go right to the corner on the other side. You know, stuff like that. So by the time I've done the second book, I learned so much from that. And the second book is a lot less, you know, pages. But I felt like it's more efficient. So that had been the biggest challenge for me, was learning to kind of edit myself and also give the reader, you know, due process here, that they give them credit, you know, and not just kind of hold their hand through. So.
And Stuart, is this your first foray into the graphic novel scene? Go ahead.
It's actually not. Because now, and I should say, like Lucy, Lucy Cummins, who Ward mentioned, I have worked with since my first book. She's an art director at Simon Schuster, but I have an unusually wonderful connection with her, that she's also my cover artist. And I should go grab. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to just grab this right here. This was the beginning of my relationship with Lucy, where she did the cover for Belly Up, and
funny.
One of the most iconic. I mean, I still have people in publishing coming up to me saying, like, this is one of the greatest covers that was ever.
That's great. And when I see that's so Lucy, because she has such a really funny, dry sense of humor.
Yeah. Yes, actually, one of the funniest people on social media ever. Also, if you like to follow people, and an incredibly talented writer of children's books and picture books and such. So like Lucy's the one who has always she's done the covers, but she's been the one who's found the artists to do the maps and things like that. And so a couple years ago, at Simon Schuster, we decided to start converting the Spy School series into graphic novels. So a talented artist named Anjan Sarkar has been working with Lucy and I on that, and we're 4 books in on that. And
that's great. Lucy sent me like the copies of that. So, and I love what he's done. He's done a great job on that.
Yeah. And then and to go with my Batman childhood, I've DC let me do this one,
nice.
which I got to do, and which is basic Bruce Wayne in middle school, and we're at work on a second of those, and the third one is in process. So yeah, so I've done. I've this is a whole new aspect of my life, right? Yeah.
So as a writer for graphic novels style books, how does your experience as a in television writing screenplays and even a reporter, newspaper columnist, how if any way does that play into how you approach this type of story?
Well, I think the screenplay the screenwriting background, I would say that my discovery was that a graphic novel is much closer to the movie than it is to the original book. And so Ward was talking about killing your darlings and having to pare this down. Like, that's really what I have to do, is go into the book and figure out, like, okay, how will I pare down all of this information? How will I make it as visual as possible? So one of those ideas being like, oh, I could have the diagrams of the characters and the the space toilet and the other objects and not have to write out what it's like, but you get to see it and have all those little arrows pointing different things, everything labeled. But for the most part, yeah, I'm trying to take, I might be taking a 10 pages of dialogue from a book and figuring out how do I condense this down to screenplay version, 3 pages of dialogue, which is still a lot to draw and make dynamic. Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue in the books.
And then I have to like make sure I'm like, okay, it's not back and forth always, like maybe do a shot where we're looking down or something.
Yeah.
I have to, so.
Right. So yeah. So right. So it's getting super super condensed. It's like it's just like, okay, I do it, and then Ward does it, and then in fact, actually, I don't even know on because Ward I got the layouts for Spaced Out, which is the next one, and they were, and basically the publisher came and said, it's still too wordy. Can I go through and still figure out ways to knock out like a sentence here or there? So I had to go through and do that like in a PDF. So yeah, so it is this very different storytelling style, and I mean, gosh, I hope it works for your work, because like me doing the screenplay version, there are other versions where it would be up to me to break it down panel by panel, right? And say what happened. And that's what we do at DC, but it seems to me that's a little like, you seem far more qualified to know what should be happening panel by panel than me.
No, well, honestly, I think that's actually the interesting thing that I've learned as being an artist for, like, say, the illustrator, working alongside with the author. And I know that especially with picture books that I've illustrated, that because I've never like authored my own picture book, which I hope to someday. But there is a little bit of like having a letting go. It's like putting your baby out into the world, and and giving. You're allowing me, this great opportunity to kind of like visualize, your world that you've created. So there is a little bit of kind of like, I better make sure I do this correctly, or or at least do something that I feel like feels right, And it was actually nice to get the email from you saying that, I think it was from our editor, said that you felt that I was like in your head, about, which I was like, perfect, great, and I was like trying to tap into something that I was seeing in the words, in the dialogue, and in your actions, and how you stage things. And you do a great job, I think, with staging. And I think the element of using introducing certain elements or people as its own page, I think that really helps. But I think that I think that I can't imagine it being difficult to cut back so much, and then still expect this artist to kind of probably even do even more weird stuff, to your words, But that I do hope that's my goal, is to make sure that we're literally on the same page here, and also as I also think of the reader as well. I think that it helps to kind of have a I wouldn't say a childlike mindset, but I do try to think of, sometimes I think of my 10-year-old, 12-year-old self, like, would I like this if I was reading this?
Yeah. I mean, no, I look, first of all, I couldn't be happier. And secondly, I mean, the testament to all this is that, the book just came out, and so I've started doing events for it. And, so you talk to kids, and then they got to go wait in line for you to sign it. And as they're waiting in line with the book, as each one comes, like they've read more and more of the book, but that's what they're doing. They're sitting in line, just
That's great.
reading the book.
Immersed.
They have it, so that by the I sort of by the end, you're like, oh my god, this kid's read half the book already. It's just sitting.
That's a good sign,
Yeah.
That's great. I'm actually doing this is actually I don't do many appearances, but I will be on the panel for the Cater Book Festival coming up, and I'm actually looking really forward to that. Just seeing kind of like, this is definitely my first foray into this realm of this world of like graphic novels, and I've been thoroughly enjoying this whole process. It's been definitely a learning process, but that's like, if I wasn't learning, then I'm not. I don't feel like I'm being right, as an artist. But so I have definitely been enjoying this whole process, and many thanks to Lucy for saying, hey, I think you might be good for this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and I'll just say, like, Lucy is so good and so down. Like, so, like, if Lucy comes to me and says, like, I think this is the person, I'm gonna, like, there's almost like what, like, I'm gonna be like, yeah, that's the person. Okay. And so, right, you'll sort of, we'll look at the drafts, and Lucy will have, like, to see how she comes into it so visually. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just sort of like, does this look like, is this progressing the story in the way I want? Is anything confusing?
Yeah.
And Lucy will say, like, oh, this should be the two characters in one shot. I'll be like, yeah, okay, like,
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What Lucy? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Ward, I mean, it looks, just from the looks of the book, I assume you work digitally?
Yeah. So I work in Photoshop. So I will take these drawings, and I will scan these. And if it's the ones that are like just in the margins, I kind of would just I could, sometimes these are too small that I will just look at these, but I do it digitally. I'll have a rough, and sometimes I think the most important thing is panel placement, and then of course dialogue placement. That was a big major issue, making sure, because there is a lot of exposition, especially near the end when we have like a big reveal, and we're trying to work around that, and then you have a lot of different people in maybe in a very confined room, and so that's kind of been my biggest learning thing to learn here was this, how to do that correctly. And then, so I work in Photoshop, and then we had somebody else, a colorist, do colors.
Okay.
And then and because I was a little behind on the deadlines, because of again, I had mentioned this earlier, a lot of things happening in my life. We had another inker to come in and do like maybe about a third of the pages. But it's all my all the layouts and that sort of thing, pencils, I guess.
So as we kind of wrap up here, is there anything else about the book or the experience that either of you would like to mention? Or yeah, go ahead.
Look, I think like, on one hand, when I come to these sorts of things, like, I want to give Ward as much leeway as he, like in terms of layout and stuff, but this one in particular, it was really important. Like the moon base had to look like a real, like what it might really look like. Feel like this is something we might build in 30 years or something. That the rovers, the robot, like, I felt like there was a place that I could have I was going to be picky, right, and say like, okay, that's not right, and I there are a few things maybe with like there being too many people on the base, but that almost didn't happen, right? Like I was just looking at this saying like, oh, the characters, right? Like, so all that work that Ward did thinking these things through, like some of those scenes are not like, I knew when I was writing it, like, wow, this is not going to be the easiest thing to keep like dynamic, and you just, I feel like you just hit it out of the park. You did such a great job.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And there's more coming, folks. So I've now seen book 2, and right. I think both you and I were learning how to condense this better this time. And
yeah, I was actually curious. Did you already have the scripts done like long before, or like?
Yeah. Well, we. Yeah, because I guess it's Simon Schuster. We knew we were going to do all 3 at once, so I kind of just put the 3 scripts together all at one time.
So you like hunkered down and went through. And,
but rather than doing it like each one a year apart or something like that. But I do think that when we started to recognize that the first one was too I think they get shorter as they go. I think Simon Schuster was like, we gotta really we gotta a little bit off Ward's plate,
edit,
make it a little bit short. So
the second one is definitely a lot shorter. I mean, the story is really kind of fascinating. That one. I mean, they're both great. And actually, I've yet to read the third one, which I just got the script, and I'll be reading that soon. But I do feel that I think. Well, the reason I was asking that, I was wondering is like, when you, after seeing the first pencils and stuff that I was doing, did it change any direction for like how you were writing the second, or or just editing the second one, or if it was already done? Then
it was already done, but based when I turned in, but I didn't turn them all in at the same time. So I guess I was writing them. So I turned in the first one, and but I think they must have at some point in this process gone back in, because they said like, wow, this just like you gotta kill more darlings.
Yeah. It's a sad thing. The second one actually has some really, I think we do a little bit more in depth. I actually was able to really sit down and go, okay, how were the rovers designed? And I tried my best to make sure that it was not like this. Let's see. Okay, so I will say, like, most of the aesthetics, I attribute. There's one artist that he did work for the Alien Isolation game that came out like about maybe 10 years ago, and his work was very like perfect with that kind of like that, almost like Alien / Outland decor of like how these space rooms and the bases look like, and that really helped my look and feel like how things should be designed, and very kind of low key and not like super sci-fi with I just make sure that it wasn't looking too sci-fi. Yeah, I think it has to be grounded, and I felt like and so that was when I designed the rovers. I kept that in mind, of kind of like definitely cutting back a lot. We're not going to have some really crazy stuff, but I was referring to a lot to like what NASA had designed, and also I think for SpaceX stuff that they had designed as well. So I was using a lot of like reference for that.
I mean, it's actually it's kind of funny because Garrett, my astronaut friend, then went to SpaceX to run human spaceflight, and then like one of the things he did when he was there was he was like, we need to design new uniforms for the astronauts, but it's they're in LA, so he's like, well, who's put more time into this than anybody else? You know what? Movie costume designers.
That's true, yeah.
He went to Hollywood movie costume designers to say like, how do you do this? And then they played around with like design. So there's some interesting sort of cyclical stuff, but that all going
really funny.
Right. When I write in here and I say, oh, like in the book, I say, okay, well, they go off into space, they got to put on a spacesuit. That's easy for me. For you, suddenly you're like, okay, what's that?
I have to because then you might be referencing something about like well, like about the oxygen and such.
Yeah.
So I had to sometimes I might have to go go back and go, okay, did I draw that correctly? Because then they're talking about this, and so there were a couple of things I just kind of made up as I was going along,
So I think the rover looks great. I think like their spacesuits look great. I think I just it's all what the base looks like on the inside, on the outside. It all just looks just amazing. So it's all
I had so much fun.
Appreciate all the time.
Oh no, and I appreciate your stories. They're just fantastic to kind of dive in. I'm excited about the third book to see how where it'll take us. So we're already talking about the future, Chad.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was going to say, if you want to give as we wrap up, if you want to kind of pitch anything or tell people where they can find more of your stuff, then let's do that, and you can throw in whatever teasers you want.
Well, you guys should certainly know that there will, if you like Space Case, the graphic novel, the other two books in the series, Spaced Out and Waste of Space, will be coming out. I feel like Spaced Out is targeted for about this time next year. Yes,
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I know that they're going through coloring right now.
Yeah,
I believe,
yeah.
and I haven't seen anything. I don't know how it looks yet, so I'm curious.
So that's coming, and then for me on the novel front, I've got the next Spy School novel, Spy School Blackout, will be out in October of 2025, and then I do a Fun Jungle series, and that. The next book in that series, Ape Escape. Those covers both done by Lucy Cummins. That'll be out in March, and then we're fingers crossed that maybe in addition to the Spy School graphics, we get maybe some Fun Jungle graphics or some Charlie Thorne graphics, something like that in the future.
I'm available.
I'm all down for that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really, this is the main thing I have, and I do have a picture book idea that I've written and put together a dummy that's being passed around right now thanks to my literary agent. But for the most part, I've been kind of waiting on any word from studio that does the Camp Snoopy stuff. But it's animation has been kind of in a weird little hiccup. But really, this is the thing that I'm working on right now. But
And are either of you brave enough to be on social media?
I've been on it for years.
I'm on Instagram and TikTok, but I forget about it all the time.
Probably best.
I've been I'm on Instagram, but I have as typical, I have several. It's only because I have one that's kind of more personal, but one is like for art only. It's Jenkins. And then I'm on Blue Sky. That's kind of more what I like. It's a lot more artists. It's very artist friendly, and I like that. Sometimes I want to get into the meta web, but did I say that too loud?
No.
No, but yeah, I've been actually I used to do blogs, and I was also involved with like a really nice artist collaboration blog that got a lot of viewers, and I love actually sharing. Some of my favorite things to do is I collect old art in children's books from like the 50s and 60s, and try to showcase like those artists that came of that era that kind of went around like doing amazing work but nobody really knew about. So that's been kind of fun for me to kind of, it's almost like a kind of reminder of where we came from, and that sort of thing. So
all right, well, it is Space Case, the graphic novel, not Space Camp, Space Case. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to chat about it, and when the next one comes out, we hopefully will be able to catch up and see how this and that one it turned out.
Hopefully it won't be the only other time we've met.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah. Well, if you guys, anytime you guys want to chat and have something that you'd like to talk about, just let me know and we'll set something up.
I should say the whole reason Ward and I don't talk is because he does such good work. I don't ever have to talk to him.
That's right. That's right. If I hear a lot from the author, I'm like, okay, I must have done something wrong. No. It's been a joy, Stuart, and also thanks, Chad, for bringing this together. I think this has been a fantastic environment, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you guys, and enjoy the rest of your day.